All right, guys, day one. So we are going to start some notes today. We're going to talk about radicals. This is definitely a review from Unit 7, but obviously during that time there was e-learning. So we'll see what you remember. First thing, let's talk about what are perfect squares. Okay, well, perfect squares are anytime you multiply the same number by itself, it is the resulting product, right? So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. And it continues. So 3 squared is 9, 16, 25, etc. The biggest thing about these is that you will need them for simplifying radicals. We want to use the largest perfect square that goes into any radical when we try to simplify it. So could you use your calculator for this? Absolutely. Should you use your calculator for this? Absolutely not, unless it's a bigger number, because you want to be able to go right to it. So hopefully you know these as much as I do. Just kidding, I know that's not possible. But generally speaking, you'll be asked to know up to 15 squared. As you can see, I created a table for you up to 20 squared. You should save this, right? Save this for all your homework, your Canvas quizzes or whatever you're doing, that you have it available to you. All right, so let's look at some examples. When you simplify radicals, you want to look for factors that are perfect squares. Okay, then break them down using the largest perfect square factor. So what we mean by that is using these numbers that are up top, what's the biggest one that goes into 72? Okay, well, you have 36. See, I'm sure that you probably actually went with 9 because 9 times 8, but it's not the biggest one. Now, could you have used that? Yes, but it's not going to be as fast. So we're going to break this down. So radical 72 breaks down into radical 36 times 2, which is radical 36 times radical 2, which is 6, because the square root of 36 is just 6, radical 2. Radical 2 does not have a square root, or at least not a nice one, so you just leave it at that, and that is the simplest radical. Okay, so for radical 10, do the same thing. What's the biggest radical up top that goes into it? Well, the only factors of 10 are 5 and 2, but neither of those are perfect squares, so in this case, it's actually not simplifiable. This is the simplest it goes. So you could say not simplifiable or already simplified when that happens. Okay, number 3, 2 and the square root of 80. Okay, using your calculator, you could go up through. So the highest one prior to 80 would be 64. 80 divided by 64 is not an even number, so that's not going to be it. 49 also doesn't work. 36 also doesn't work. 25 doesn't work because 25 times 3 is 75, so that's not even. But 16 does go into it 5 times. So again, you could use your calculator for this, but this is going to be equal to 2 radical 16 times radical 5. 16 breaks down. The square root of 16 is a whole number. It's 4. So we're going to simplify that. So now you have 2 times 4 times radical 5. So this would be 8 radical 5. And again, 5 does not have a perfect square that goes into it, so it's already simplified. Okay, when you have a negative number, remember it's like -1 out front. So you're just going to keep it that way. 243. We're going to use our calculator if we need to. Or if you notice you have 3, okay, so you might be aware, or again, you can use your calculator, but in this case it's 81. So this is going to be radical 81 times 3. Okay, and you can see I'm kind of doing the tree method here. You could also do it the other way like I just did the other one. Make sure to keep your negative out front, which means that it breaks down. Radical 81, or take the square root of 81, you get 9, so you have 9 radical 3, and then you have the negative out front. Okay, same thing up here. So you have the negative out front, square root of 81 is 9, okay, and then radical 3. So -1 times -1 times 9 is -9. So there's your answer. Okay. what if there's an exponent with my radical? Well, if you square root and you square something, they are inverse operations. So some of you love to say, well, take the square root of this, and then you put the number above. You have to be careful with the terminology that you use. But if it says the square root of 16, what is the square root of 16? And we square that, they cancel each other out. This just becomes 16. Okay, it's the same thing as saying radical 16 times radical 16. Well, square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 16 is 4. This gives you 16. So you can see they are the same identical number. Same thing over here. So we have radical 8 times radical 8, right? Which will give you radical 64, which is 8. So simple answers, don't make it difficult. What if there's a variable under the radical? Okay, so you might not have looked at this one last year, but basically you're just going to split it down into even exponents. So since 2 is already an even number, we know that just like up here, when you take the square root and you have a 2, it cancels each other out. So we're going to split this up. This is really like saying radical 16 times radical x squared. Well, again, these two cancel each other out. Okay, and so we have radical 16 is just 4, and the square root of x squared is just x. So there's our answer there. And technically it's plus or minus. Okay, so notice this one, it is not even. So what we're going to do is we're going to split it up. Radical 242 times radical x to the 5th, but we're going to split that up into x to the 4th and x. And we do that because this is now an even number. And remember that when you multiply, so x to the 4th times x to the 1st, you add the exponent. So it's like saying x to the 4 plus 1, which is x to the 5th, right? So we're able to split this up using this same idea, the same concept. Okay? And so we bring that down. Square root of 242 times square root of x to the 4th, since it's even, it's just half of that. Right? Or, well, I shouldn't say since it's even. I should say since this is a perfect square, the square root of 4 is 2. And then we can't do anything with this one because it's an odd number. Okay, and then this splits up into 121 and 2. So this is now 11 times radical 2 times x squared times radical x. Okay, so this would be 11x squared. I'm going to rearrange because it's multiplication. So we're allowed to with the associative property, and this is radical 2x. Done. So that was a really complicated one. You're not going to necessarily have to know that one, but at least it gives you some perspective on how to do it. Okay, and so your practice is right here. The answers are posted below, so you want to go ahead and check those. But you will be graded on this exit ticket. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions on this exit ticket. Each one is 2 points apiece. Okay, so make sure to do these tonight. Submit them into Canvas, and we'll go over them first thing tomorrow. All right, have a great rest of your day. Talk to you guys soon.